welcome to the Dishy Switch Podcast. This is episode number 9. Your one-stop shop for development ultimate-wise in South Africa and globally. This week we have an interview again, which we're very excited about because we learned quite a lot during this one. But before we get to that, let's catch up with what's been happening in the news developments locally and abroad. And I switch to Dill.
Hey everyone. So locally, not too much is happening. Cape Town has started their unofficial league where teams can play each other a little bit more. Some of the bigger developments are Marty's is kind of on fire at the moment, beating teams. I don't think a team has scored more than 5 against them so far. And Nomads have come out really strong, beating the number 1 seed in Cape Town, which is Heat. They beat them in a league match. But yeah, that's that so far. In terms of international news, Australia is currently having their nationals. It's the 11th of April today. We don't know how it's going, obviously, because it's there. But it's cool that they've finally gotten to a point where they can commit to playing Ultimate properly. And then there's... I don't quite know how to explain this. There's potentially a new form of Ultimate coming out called Ultimate 4s, which is basically going to be 4 vs 4 on a slightly smaller field. It's going to be mixed and single division, where mixed would be 2 of each gender. Quite an interesting concept because it's going to be a lot quicker, as any time that you play a smaller than 7v7 or let's just say 4v4. It has to be a lot quicker because if the disc gets bogged down, it's stuck for a while. So it's going to be quite interesting having potentially a new form of Ultimate to compete in if that is taken forward.
Yeah, agreed. I like playing 4v4. I use it a lot in my coaching because everyone gets a disc a lot, which is good for game reps, especially if you're a cutter, because no matter how good a cutter you are, you simply don't get the disc as often as a handler does. So very dynamic, very quick game, lots of space to attack, and that sounds amazing. I'm very excited.
So yeah, we'll keep you updated if we hear anything else on that in the coming weeks. I'll be more on the lookout for it. But yeah, let's go into our guest interview. Today we have Bart. He plays disc golf. He's been playing properly for the past 5 years. He started in the States with his son, and now he's trying to get disc golf started up properly in South Africa with some more official leagues and tournaments. So let's head out to that. Hey Bart, great to have you on the Dishy Switch podcast today. So Corn and I don't know you at all. This is the first time we're meeting, and we've heard that you're the basically best disc golfer in South Africa, basically. So we wanted to know more about it from you. Can you tell us how you started playing disc golf?
Yeah, I can, and nice to meet you guys. I first came across disc golf when I was visiting my stepson in America, and on the very last day, he said, "Hey guys, let's go play some disc golf." We were like, what is that all about? I was with my son, who was about 14 at the time, and my wife. We all went and we all loved it straight away, just because we always been throwing frisbees just for fun. And anyway, so we went back there a few times and eventually started looking around to see what was happening on the South African scene. And well, I guess a bit of history. There was quite an active disc golf scene in Johannesburg starting sort of 2008, 2009, thereabouts. And we had a couple of courses at Delta Park, like 2 18-hole fully basketed courses, admittedly before my time. And they would have, 30, 40 people playing a disc golf league. It was very popular, and it went, it was really going places. But at a certain moment, unfortunately, a lot of those baskets got stolen. And I think that kind of, that was a bit of a downer, and a lot of people moved away from disc golf, moved away from Johannesburg, and so the disc golf scene kind of died a little bit. But when my son Alex and I started looking, there were still some people playing, and we slowly got involved and started to enjoy it more. And eventually, we said, well, we'd like to kind of take this on and see if we can make it grow, get it to grow. But one of the guys who was part of that original group, still had some baskets lying around in his backyard, and so he donated those to us, and we then found a venue here out in Kailami at Inanda Country Base. They agreed to let us put up a disc golf course using those baskets, sort of on a trial basis, and it's quite a good relationship with the guys, and we've now kind of have agreement that we can keep our course there. So we have quite a nice course there now. There's still a few baskets at Delta, but we're just leaving them there for people to use, sort of who are happy to be at Delta. But pretty much most of the disc golf activity takes place at Inanda at the moment, because it's just a nicer venue and you don't have the interruption with people walking, but most importantly we have 18 baskets there, so it's a proper disc golf course. So that's kind of how I got into it, and I've been playing now. I mean, apart from those early bit of holiday play, I guess for the past 5 years we've been actively trying to get disc golf going and getting people to come and play with us and trying to grow the sport.
So to bring it to compare it to our experience of Ultimate, do you have leagues or nationals or anything of the like, tournament wise?
Yeah, we had our first sort of SA Nationals for the first time last year after like a hiatus of a couple of years. And we're going to have it again this year. Last year we had it in November because of COVID, which isn't the ideal time because it's quite hot. So this year we'll probably have it around August. So we're definitely going to keep going with the nationals. We haven't really started a league. We do have sort of ad hoc sort of little tournaments. And as we get more players, then the big vision, I suppose, is to have courses in every big city, and eventually have sort of interprovincial and have lots of tournaments. But at the moment, it's still pretty low key at the moment.
And if someone won, would it be possible for them to go to like a World Championships? Is there something like that for disc golf?
There is, but I don't think it's based on national champions. I think there's sort of a qualification you have to go through. And so the idea would be that ultimately we get teams of. There's also world team events, so that is a little bit more easy to get into, where you have a team of say 6 to 8 people, normally sort of some juniors, a lady, a master like me, an old guy, and then you play against the equivalent, your opposite number in opposite teams. So that's quite a cool event. In fact, they were looking to host a regional tournament in Southern Africa, and I was actually speaking to Travis about it. We were looking to see if we could get that tournament here, but ultimately that was going to be, trying to think now, I think that was upcoming now, but we just realized with COVID, with the travel restrictions, this is going to be too difficult, and that's pretty much all those kind of big events were kind of cancelled. They have started up there's a professional tour for disc golf, which is mainly in America and Europe. That has just started going again. They've had a couple of events, so ultimately the long-term goal would be to have put a team together and get players playing those events, because that's what you want to. Ultimately you want to go towards that for sure. I can maybe mention one thing we did do. One of our players, in fact, our former national champion. One step back. So the governing body for disc golf is the Professional Disc Golf Association, run out of America, and so it is a long-term goal also to have a PDGA approved sanctioned tournament in South Africa. But the first tournament in Africa was held, I think, 2 years ago in Ethiopia, and our then national champion, JP Myers, he went out there and he represented South Africa at this sort of tournament, and in fact he came third, so he did really well.
Oh, nice.
And I think that was a good experience for him, and that's something we'd all like to do for sure.
There's a lot I want to ask you about in terms of that level of play and the similarities. between the little bit I know about golf and disc golf.
Yes.
But before we get there, I just want to ask you about the equipment you use. You mentioned baskets that you use. For those who don't know, what does a course look like? What's the equipment you use? Do you have cleats like we do? Do you have special discs? Please enlighten us.
Yeah, no, sure. Okay, so I would say the rules of disc golf are very similar to those of golf, whereby you have a starting position, which we kind of use all the golf terminology. So we have a tee pad where you start the hole, and from that tee pad you throw your first shot. I'll talk about the disc a little bit later. Wherever the disc lands, from that position you play your second shot, and you keep going until you throw into this basket. And the basket is really a metal cage which has a pole running through it, and then there's chains that drop down. So the idea would be that you throw your disc, it hits the chains and falls into the basket area. And once you achieve that, then that's your final shot for that hole. And just like in regular golf, you tally up the number of throws that you've done, and that becomes your score for the hole. In terms of the discs, there's probably more variety in disc golf discs than there is in golf clubs, because we also have drivers, and we have different profiles of discs. So your driver would typically have a very thin profile, so it's very aerodynamic and can travel longer distances, but also harder to throw because they well, it gets quite complicated, but they have a tendency to, if you're throwing a backhand shot, to go left very quickly, unless you have enough power. So you need a lot of power to throw a distance driver. But we have distance drivers, and you get them in different types of plastics as well. You get very durable plastic, very soft plastic, and different people have different preferences. Okay, so you have the distance drivers. You also have then fairway drivers, mid-range discs, approach discs, and putters. And you'll find that as you get closer to putters tend to be quite blunt and probably resemble most an ultimate disc. And so pretty much as you get closer to a putter, you have the disc can't be thrown as far, but you can throw them more accurately. So you have a range of discs. Within the disc themselves, you have differences in the molds that make the disc want to fly in certain ways, sort of the disc flight, they call the disc flight patterns. So typically, if a disc golfer takes an ultimate disc and throws it normally, it'll tend to veer to the right very strongly, which we would call an understable disc. But typically in disc golf, as you get better at the game, those discs become a little bit hard to judge, a little bit sort of, a little bit flippy. And so we tend to prefer using discs that are more overstable, whereby you throw them straight and they finish hard left every time. You want to reliably finish left every time. And that's a function also of your arm speed as well. If you take a disc and you overpower it, then it'll tend to go to the right. So there's very much a balance between the power you put onto a disc and what type of disc it is. And the interesting thing is that when you first start out playing disc golf, because I remember, Cornet, you said that you found it a little bit difficult.
Yeah.
The mistake that people make is that they think, okay, I'm on the tee pad, I want to throw it a long way, I better take a driver. But because you haven't got the power to make that disc go straight or go horizontal, you'll find it just goes a little bit and then straight away it's crashing to the left. So you get actually less distance than if you take a putter and give it a lot of power. And so as you develop the game, your arm speed improves, and you can then take these actually harder to throw discs and start to make them work for you. Did we speak about the baskets a little bit?
Yeah, we did.
Okay. Yeah. No. Cool.
Also
So I would say, I mean, generally speaking, if you know the rules of traditional ball golf, then you can play disc golf. It's exactly the same rules, which makes it kind of easy. You don't have these complicated rules to contend with.
Also, Cornet, I think you said you're weak because you can't throw a driver.
Yeah. I just want to ask one more question regarding discs before we don't take overs. Do you have specific discs you use in specific wind conditions? Because wind obviously affects a frisbee. affects us a lot, and we adjust how we throw to compensate for the wind. Do you have the advantage of having a selection of discs, that you have discs that are more usable in specific wind?
Yeah, well, we do. Look, crosswind is a bit tricky. Crosswind gets a bit difficult. But typically, when you're throwing into a headwind, the effect on the disc is that it is perceived. The disc thinks it's being thrown hard. If that makes any sense. So it tends to be more flippy and will turn over. Whereas if you have a tailwind, it tends to reduce the sort of apparent velocity, and the disc become more stable. So you compensate by that by throwing a stable disc. Let me get this right now, otherwise my son's going to crap me out. By throwing a stable disc into a headwind and an unstable disc with a tailwind. Yeah, that's right. Okay. Yeah. So yeah, we do have that. We do have the advantage of having discs that fly differently compared to an ultimate player, for sure. And I think a lot of the same rules apply. If you want to, well, with ultimate, again, you've got to be careful at your release angle. Don't throw too nose up, because then things go pear-shaped. So there's quite a lot of technical points on how to throw a disc golf disc that are, I think, a bit different to ultimate. I think ultimate's a little bit more, shorter distance mainly as well. So disc golf, the technique is slightly different too. You tend not to throw. I mean, you do want to flick your wrist, but the power doesn't come from the wrist. Yeah. It comes really from the whole body rotation, and so it is a bit different. But Corne, I want you to come and play with us, and then we will.
I'm very keen. So it sounds like there's a lot more nuance, because I think so far we've only spoken about backhand mostly. Do you use forehand or sidearm, as I've heard it used, right. And the hammer, those kind of things?
We hammer, it would be very much a specialty shot. If you're in trouble, you might throw that kind of disc. But yeah. We tend to find that most people are dominant on the one side. You have a backhand dominant player or a sidearm dominant player, but the good players are decent on both sides. We do kind of shots we have as well. If you take a very understable disc, so one that will flips to the right, if you do that to the extreme, then the disc will actually land on the edge, on the rim, and actually roll. And you have a roller shot. So you get roller shots, and you get weird shots. You get weird spike shots where you throw it really high and let it just come down quickly. So I think there's a wider variety of shots than you guys probably use in ultimate, for sure. But yeah, definitely. Throwing sidearms is a big thing, even if you don't have a good sidearm, it might just be, even if sometimes you're just in trouble, and there's because with disc golf you have obstacles, you're throwing in around near trees. So if you're in trouble and your only route out is to the left, say, it's sometimes easier to throw a sidearm, because so if you throw a disc sidearm, it's always going to finish to the right. If you throw a disc backhand, it's always going to finish to the left. So sometimes it's just better to throw a sidearm, and you know that, okay, even if I don't throw it that great, it's going to end up on the right.
So a few things that you said earlier, you said that there used to be courses in Joburg, and now you really only have one proper course and like some baskets in Delta Park.
There is a few courses coming up in Cape Town. There's some guys down there who are trying to get things going, and a few guys in Pretoria who are trying to get things going. At the moment, those are not. I think they use portable baskets, so they'll have a portable basket that they take from hole to hole. And the difficulty being that we're struggling to find venues where we can set up courses. Mainly because it does take up quite a bit of area. Although we don't need pristine, like golf club style fairways and so on, you don't want to be wading through a meter high bush either. So it does have to have a certain level of maintenance, and then because you want green spaces, those are also the same spaces that a lot of people want to use for other activities. So you have a lot of competition for those spaces. And our biggest problem is that people don't know the sport enough yet. It is becoming more popular, and we'll talk about its development, I guess, overseas. But at the moment, it's very much grassroots, trying to get things going slowly and having to go and do demos and explain to people. Public parks would be ideal, and in most countries in the world, disc golf courses are put on public courses. But as I said earlier, we have some security issues here with security in the sense of theft. Well, theft on the one hand, and secondly, just security of actually just going to walk in some parks. So we have a few challenges here, but in principle, we have all the space we need to have a great disc golf future.
And just in terms of someone new, how do they start playing disc golf? Where can you get discs? Who can you speak to play a tournament?
Yeah, disc, I would say the best thing would be, there's a number of people, including my son and I, who import discs and sell discs. So you can't go to Sportsman's Warehouse to get discs at the moment. Hopefully in the future, when the sport grows, that will be possible. But at the moment, so ourselves and a few other guys are importing and selling discs. So I would say the best approach would be to get hold of Disc Golf South Africa. I'll give you the email address now. And then we'll put you in touch with the various people who are selling discs. And then just get yourself 3 or 4 discs. Go down and practice in your local park. Even if you just walk around and say, right, now I'm going to aim for that tree. And that'll give you a sense for the flight, how the things fly, and all the rest. And then get hold of Disc Golf South Africa again, and we'll put you on the on a WhatsApp group. We have a Facebook page, and then through that you'll get advised of any tournaments that are happening.
Okay, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. You can give us that email address, and we'll put it in the description. So if anyone wants to see it, they'll be able to get hold of you.
Awesome, yeah.
So Colin, you can go.
Sorry, so I know there's a few disc brands in disc golf, which we don't really have to the same degree in Ultimate. We mostly use Discraft, so I know Innova is pretty big in disc golf as well. What's the major differences between two big brands like Innova and Discraft, and which is your preference if you have any?
There's some difference, so you're quite right. I would probably top of my head name 10 disc golf companies or 10 disc golf manufacturing companies. The biggest probably are the two biggest are the ones you mentioned, Innova and Discraft. After that, you get Latitude, you get the Trilogy companies. Prodigy is very up and coming, and I'm actually a Prodigy dealer. MVP. So I'd say there's a number of companies. Look, the differences are in the molds and in the plastics. But pretty much, I would, without generalizing, I would say that in most cases, a distance driver that Innova has in its lineup, you'll probably find something comparable at Discraft, and you'll probably find something comparable with Prodigy and Discmania. But people, there are, just like anything else, you're a BMW driver and I'm a Mercedes driver. People tend to form an allegiance to a certain company. But I'm personally, I do still find a certain disc that I haven't found alternatives for in one company, so then I use the disc of another company. That is definitely something that happens. But the other funny thing is that, talking about discs, so you might think that you want to have, so let me give you an example. You have a disc golf bag. Professional player will walk around with 25 discs, but you'll actually find that if you look at some of the videos, they might only have 8 or 9 different types of discs.
Okay.
So what they'll do is they'll like a certain mold of disc, and it serves a certain function. But as you now play with that disc, and it starts, you hit a few trees here and there, you hit a few obstacles, it starts to change the stability of that disc, and typically discs become more flippy and less. So you might get better distance, but they get a bit harder to control. So what the top pros will often do is they'll have a number of discs of the same mold, but some of them are just newer, and they'll slowly season them in over time so that they always have a disc that they're throwing at that point in time. But also discs get lost, so they always want to make sure they have something in their bag that's going to serve whatever flight they're trying to achieve. So getting back to the companies, I don't have a particular preference. I don't want to say, although I'm a Prodigy dealer, I'm not saying that Prodigy is the greatest company. All the companies make good discs. I mean, there are probably a few that are still developing their technology, but all the big established companies, they all have good discs and are perfectly suitable to get going in the game.
Okay, so yeah, thank you. That makes a lot of sense. So something you might not know is that Dylan is a pretty good roller of the disc, or thrower of rollers. That's obviously something we don't use in frisbee or in ultimate, because when the disc hits the floor, it's a turnover, unless when you're pulling, then the roller is an option, which Dylan and I both use because we both pull. Could you quickly tell us about what the functionality is of a roller when you would use it? And then secondly, what kind of disc would you use for a roller? Because obviously stability and so on is not as big an issue, I would imagine.
Well, look, a roller you'd use typically, rollers can achieve great distance. So particularly if you have you obviously need a hard ground to execute a roller properly. But if you get it, so you use an understable disc and you throw it so hard that it hits the ground on the rim, and it just keeps going and keeps rolling. So if you have a wooded course, but you want to get a long distance and there's lots of obstacles, then you might opt for a roller if the ground conditions allow you to.
Perfect.
Are there any particular discs that you use for that, or you just use any disc from your bag?
Well, understable discs. Trying to think now. Yeah, probably sort of fairway driver sort of thing, something that has a thin rim, a thin edge.
The disc that's been beaten up because it's going to hit the ground.
Yeah, not too beaten up. Yeah.
So if we had to play disc golf with our ultimate discs instead of the proper discs that you guys have, how far behind do you think we would get to you? If you scored, let's just say, in an 18-hole course, 40 something, what would we score?
Yeah, I think you'd probably lose a shot on every hole. I think you lose a shot on every hole. So if I'm making, if it's a par 3 and I'm using 3 shots, I think you'd be using 4. Just because I think the distance from the tee pad, as well as the maneuverability of the disc, I think is more tricky to control with an ultimate disc.
Okay.
But I must say, certain, not all, but certain ultimate discs are permitted. The PDGA has certain. The disc has to go through a whole verification process before it can be allowed or permitted in tournament use. And I know there are some ultimate discs that have cracked the nod, so you can use some ultimate discs legitimately in tournaments.
And would that be used more as like a putter or like a mid-range?
I would say more as an approach disc. Approach, maybe a putter, yeah.
Okay.
Definitely not as a driver.
So
okay, you go, Colin.
Training is something I'm very intrigued about. I mean, we know the way we train in ultimate, it's a very fitness intensive sport, so we obviously train a lot of fitness, and there's a technique element, throwing and cutting and so on, and we train that, and then we also spend time in the gym to get stronger so we can get more explosive. Is there a specific way you guys train besides being on the course? Specific training sessions or gym sessions, and what do the pros do? Do they hit the gym?
Yeah, look, I think it's becoming more and more professionalized now. I think, years gone by, I think they were not as focused on the athletic side of it, but the top pros nowadays are fit. They are fit. At my sort of level, I don't do anything special in the gym for disc golf. What I'd say we mainly do is do field work. So you take, go find an open field, take 10, place a target somewhere on the field, take 10 different types of discs, and work out how you get the disc from point A to point B. And that's going to help you really get to know all your discs. Because sometimes you're going to lose a disc and you're stuck somewhere, you've got to use another disc. So you have to know how to throw each disc to achieve a certain end result. So I think field work is probably the main thing that we do. It's not a very athletic sport. Obviously we're not running around like you guys. It's more, I think, more of a mental sport that you need very good concentration. You need to be able to visualize the lines that you're trying to throw. So it's more. I think that's more an aspect that we have to think about more than the physical nature. But having said that, I've noticed even ultimate players, when they come and they throw, they play around with disc golf. They have sore triceps in particular and shoulders, because generally speaking, you have to throw a disc golf disc a lot harder to get it to do anything that seems like it's doing the right thing. And after sort of 10, 15 holes, I've heard people say, geez, this is quite a hectic thing here. But over time, you develop that muscle strength in those areas. And yeah, look, it's not. I was going to say it's not super athletic, but it nonetheless it does give you a workout. Certainly, your body rotation, your core's got to be strong, and you've got to have a lot of explosivity on the release. You really want to cock your wrist and give the disc a lot of spin, as well as sort of body rotation to give the whole disc forward momentum, because that's really what it's all about. You want speed to get distance and lift. But you need stability through the spin to keep the disc to keep it stable, to get it moving, not flapping around in the wind.
Makes complete sense.
Yeah.
So, on top of that, with training, and you say that you go throw in an open park sometimes, and now bringing that to kind of what makes people the best at the sport. So in ultimate, it's generally the most athletic, or some of these guys just have incredible skills on the field. They can throw wherever they want. They can you basically can't stop them. And a lot of these guys are from the bigger places because they have a bigger selection pool and that kind of stuff. What makes disc golf players the best that there are out there?
Yeah, I think there's two elements really. Obviously you have to have good form. By good form, so you have to have a good technique. What a good technique does is allows you to throw more consistently. If you have a technique that's a little bit quirky, then you're going to get mixed results. So you want to try and get your technique down that is consistent. Obviously, the better your technique is, the further you'll typically throw, assuming similar physical strength. But yeah, consistency is probably more important than raw power. It helps you nothing if you can throw an absolute bomber 200 meters, but you're throwing it at 45 degrees to where the target is. So often the more consistent players will get better scores. And the second element, I'd say, the top players, they have to have a lot of imagination and a lot of creativity, because you have different obstacles. You're not going to end up in the same position every time. So you have different obstacles, different wind conditions, and so there's always like 3 or 4 different ways of throwing a disc, and probably 4 or 5 different discs that you could choose for a certain position that you find yourself in. So it's knowing which of those different elements, which of those possibilities is going to give you the best chance of success. So it's quite a creative game from that point of view.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Creativity is something that is also used in Ultimate a lot. I mean, the guys that can make those throws that no one else thinks that they can make is very often sets people apart.
Yeah.
One of my last questions. In Ultimate, you have a lot of people deciding to wear gloves. because it makes catching a disc considerably easier, and then it also allows you to add more snap when you're throwing, to get that extra rotation. Do you see disc golf players wearing gloves very often? I mean, when all the videos that I've watched, I've never seen anyone wear them.
Yeah, I haven't either. Obviously, we don't catch each other's discs. So yeah, but I must admit, I've never seen a disc golfer wearing a glove. Yeah, maybe it's untapped potential. I don't know, because if you can get more snap, it might be something to look at, because certainly, sometimes the disc can be a little bit slippery, and then you don't want to be like gripping the disc, really, really strong, but you do want to grip it fairly tight to be able to generate the power on it. So that's an interesting one. I hadn't thought of wearing, maybe try a mountain bike glove or something and see how it goes.
I know that the glove brand that I wear, because I wear gloves when I play Ultimate, called Friction, they have a disc golf glove, if I remember.
Wow. Okay.
For me, well, besides the things that it's a little more grippy than bare skin, which I like when catching. It's also, we have to block the disc when on defense, and it helps when it's cold. But for me, I find that this sits more snugly in my hand, which I like. I like the feel of that.
Yes.
And I imagine I would transition onto the disc golf field as well, or course, having less movement in the hand with the disc. I want to ask you about something you touched on very briefly just now, which is the mental aspect of the game. I mean, I assume whether you're competing in a tournament or whether you're pushing yourself, if you're inclined to that, wanting to better your course record, your own course record, when you set up and there's that very important putt or that very important set play in terms of your throw, is that something you guys work through by visualizing the course beforehand or the hole beforehand, or is that just something you build up over time with experience?
Look, certainly the top pros. Sorry, Dylan, can you hear me okay now? Yeah, okay. Certainly the top pros, I've heard them speak a lot about visualization, and I think we all do it, but I think it's something that we probably could all do a lot more of. But there's different views on how focused you need to be. You get some players who, they'll be at the tee box and they're like super concentrated, and you get other guys who are very casual. They come up and they throw it, and they both can get good results. So I'm not overly convinced that it's that important. But it's a good point. It's a very good point. Yeah.
My second last question, which is, I was going to ask you about the best players in the world and what makes them really good. And the very little I've watched of the disc golf circuit is Paul Macbeth stood out for sure. He's a very, very good player. From my little bit of understanding of the sport, when I browsed through to the rest of players, when I got to female players, his name that stands out is Holly Finley. Holly actually approached us in Cape Town some years ago, I think in 2012, and we hosted a tournament in Stellenbosch that year. And she was sponsored by Innova at the time, so I got to play a tournament with her, and she's obviously very, very good. Yeah. Have you had the chance to play, besides your initial exposure of playing in the US on a course, have you had the chance to play on the big courses abroad, and have you gotten to share a hole with a big name player?
No, I haven't, unfortunately. I played some good courses in Europe, but I wouldn't say the absolute top courses. But I'm hoping to change that in June. There's my son and I, and then two other guys who were part of DGSA. They don't actually live here anymore. They're actually the two Americans that they live abroad, but they were part of our sort of group. And we've all entered to play a tournament on the European Tour called Toonie.
Oh, that's exciting.
Yeah, the Toonie Open. Now obviously, it's very much COVID dependent, but that's a major, major tournament. That is probably one of the top 3 tournaments on the European Tour, and it's played.
Amazing.
It's actually played over over 3 days, and you play 5 different courses in your category. So we'll have experience of it. I mean, look, it's going to be a little bit hair raising because there's like huge crowds as well.
Yeah.
So it's going to be hectic. So I'm looking forward to it, but a little bit apprehensive as well.
Yeah, good luck with your preparation for that. And if they broadcast that, we'll definitely support you. So I know there will be some support from back home.
Yes.
My last question before I hand back to Dylan is, anyone who's been listening to this and are convinced they want to try disc golf, you've mentioned your website, which we'll put the details in the description. Is there any advice you can give in terms of people they need to watch online, or any other resources they can tap into to take their first tentative steps into the sport?
I would say, really, I would say get some discs, and there's a ton of really good instructional videos on YouTube that will explain the basics of the throws, all the different types of throws, and let's get out there and throw. And then once you feel that, okay, I'm now ready to take the next level, get hold of Disc Golf South Africa, and hopefully you're in an area where we can help you. You can come and play with us, and to get you going on the sport with more discs or advice or everything else. That's what I would say you should do. But as I say, hopefully in the next couple of years we can get more courses going so that we can grow the sport here in South Africa.
Agreed. Yeah. Dylan, anything from you?
I have 2 more questions as well. So, Corne spoke about Paul Macbeth, and someone new on the kind of disc golf radar. He played Ultimate, he then went to golf, and now he plays disc golf. Is Brodie Smith.
Brodie.
What are your thoughts on Brodie?
Brodie has been fantastic for disc golf. I mean, I actually knew Brodie because my son and I watched all his trick shot, frisbee videos, and we then decided. I think there was a video where he played with I think Paul Macbeth and Simon Lizotte, and I think he realized that, hey, this disc golf actually is not so easy as he thought it was, and then he got sponsored by Discraft and is now committed, I think, for the most part, to disc golf. So I think he's been great, and people, he's quite an engaging character. So I think people, a lot of Ultimate players have been following him, which is good for the exposure to disc golf. But I have to say, he's also become a really good disc golfer. He's obviously got a lot of natural athletic ability and a lot of disc sense, probably from his Ultimate days. Well, not probably, definitely from his Ultimate days. And so he's making a splash. I mean, I saw one of the Pro Tour events, one of the first, I think the second event, I think he finished 20th, but he beat some very, very some marquee names in the sport. He finished like -15 and they finished like -3 under par. So he's doing really well, and he's someone to actually look out for. Very good guy.
And then my last question is, what is your best score? I don't know what an average score would be while playing disc golf.
Sure. Well, I'd say maybe I'll just give you the Ananda disc golf course in Kailani, which is a 21-hole course. And my best score there is 11 under. The course record is 15 under. It is held by my son. So I've got a little way to go. And that, I think, is a good score. I think you could probably get it up to, I think there's potential to move that score up to 18 under. But yeah, I would say that's probably my best, single round score in disc golf. I'm okay. I'd say I'm a above average player, but I'm certainly no Paul Macbeth or anything. But yeah, I guess maybe to put things into perspective, how disc golf is developing worldwide and why we really want to get it going. We probably have about 10 million players playing disc golf on a regular basis worldwide. These are stats provided by the PDGA. And there's more than 8,000 courses worldwide that are like official courses that the PDGA knows about. So it's really growing at an exponential rate. And yeah, I just think South Africa needs to, we really need to get on the bandwagon because it's such a lot of fun. It's basically you're taking a 2.5 hour walk in nice surroundings, and you're getting some exercise, and you're having fun. The disc is fun. They do lots of weird things. It's also not a sport where you could do the same thing and get the same results every time, because the variables change. It's hotter one day, but it's windier another day. A branch that wasn't there last week has suddenly grown a little bit out that way, so the line that you wanted to take isn't there. So that variety makes it very challenging and very satisfying.
And of course, it's not saying that obviously COVID did some good for the sport, given that a lot of Ultimate players stopped playing Ultimate, or not necessarily stopped, but they moved over to disc golf to ensure that they could keep throwing. And that has obviously done some good for disc golf.
Absolutely. The disc golf actually had its highest annual growth in terms of number of the interest in the sport. You can become a member of the PDGA. That then once you're a PDGA member, it entitles you to enter the official tournaments. And I think they increased their membership by 20% year on year during COVID. And look, obviously it was, it's a very socially distant sport, and all the rest of it is outdoors, so it met a lot of the criteria that were in place during all the lockdowns. But I think partly just the exposure on YouTube and other channels, the exposure to the major tournaments. People are seeing these guys playing, and the sport's improved as well. If you go back 20 years and you look what they termed a driver then, it looks completely different to what a driver is today. So the technological development of the equipment is changing, the fitness level of the players is changing. They're getting more fitter, stronger. They throw further. They try different shots. So it's quite exciting at the moment.
Mm.
So when you come to play?
I mean, Joburg is far away. Is the big problem here.
Yeah. So I didn't ask where you guys physically were. Are you in Cape Town?
Yeah, both of us are in Cape Town.
Oh, I see. Yeah, okay. Well, it's not that far, but yeah, fair enough. Yeah.
Yeah. Once you get those courses set up in Cape Town, we'll be the first there to come play.
Yeah, there's as I said, outside of this, I'll put you in touch with a friend of mine who's busy in Cape Town. And you can hook up with him, and he'll take you around. There's some stuff happening around Stellenbosch, Somerset West, those areas.
Nice.
Cool.
And yeah, thanks so much for coming through today to our podcast. Really is cool to learn about something new. And I mean, for us, disc golf is mostly just throwing a disc in the park, and for you guys, it's so much more. And we'd like it to become that for us as well. So yeah, appreciate your insights. No,
cool, man. Excellent. Absolutely, my pleasure. And if people are interested in disc golf, please get hold of us via the email address that'll be linked to the podcast, and we'd love to get everybody going in disc golf as well.
Cool. Cheers.
Cool. Kone, Dylan, thanks so much, guys.
Thank you so much to Bart for running us through what disc golf really is. Obviously shows in great contrast how little I knew about the sport when I ran through it very early in the season of the Dishy Switch Podcast. Sounds really interesting. Implore you to support him and his son when they go represent South Africa in June. It is a very spectator-friendly sport online too. The campaigns that they show, the tours they show are amazing to watch. And I mean, anyone who throws a disc knows how difficult it is, and when you have to work through a technical course like a forest or something, it is very exciting. So thank you to Bart for giving us some time on a Sunday. If you like what we do here, please consider subscribing. Hit the notification bell icon so that you are notified when we post new videos, and follow us on Instagram, Dishy_Switch. We'll update you there on any developments related to the channel. And with that, looking forward to league. We'll see you on the field, and cheers.
Cheers, everyone.